Greetings to our beautiful V family all over the planet. This is your Chief. So proud today to introduce a brand new series from the V that is going to be out every second Saturday of every month. And this series is simply called In the Zone with the one and only, our upline, our mentor, our visionary, the one and only Dato Sri Vijayeshwan. Now, Dato Sri and myself did this 2 years ago, one episode, and we didn't continue after that. But due to the strong demand from all of you across the planet, Dato Sri has willingly agreed to do the episode every month for 2017, our Limitless year. And guys, for you to understand, this session is about me as a mentee speaking to my mentor, my upline, who guided me all these years as he has guided all the V partners, AVPs, V councils, core in-service members. Alright? And Dato Sri is back again as our upline on this series of being in his zone, in the series of In the Zone. Dato Sri Vijayeshwan, thank you so much for this opportunity, Dato Sri. The network today sees you only on VCon stage. They never had the chance, like I had, to sit down with you over coffee at your home. I still remember late nights where we asked you the pertinent questions of our journey in networking and the advice you would give us, right, basically to be a better person and a better networker. And as you know, Dato Sri, the V has launched a mantra this year called Limitless. And I remember when I first sat with you 18 years ago, you said, Padman, remember one thing, your potential is limitless. And the only person who can hold you back is yourself, no one else. And Dato Sri, how would you share this message today of our potential being limitless? Because your downlines don't believe that. They have too many limitations. How would you share this, Dato Sri, with all your downlines around the world?
Well, first of all, it is I who am thankful because, for me, this is networking 101.
Yes.
And I'm looking always for opportunities where I can talk to people. And unfortunately, it's not as often as it used to be.
True, Dato Sri.
Anyway, I'm glad we can raise and answer some questions as we go along. To me, being limitless is basically setting yourself free from the chains that you have invariably designed around you. We are born limitless.
Yes.
If you want to see a child, I mean, in one of my training videos, there's a beautiful, brilliant video. It's on YouTube of a 3-year-old standing up there saying, "Do it now."
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and that child is limitless. She's not bound by shame or indignation. She's not bound by any of the rationales that we apply. She just totally wants to get her message across, and she wants to say, "Do it, do it, do it now." And what happened to us is we grew up. We all were that child at one point in time. And Limitless is just going back to that point where, we could once again sense that freedom that comes with being able to be just exactly who you are. And we have just created layers and layers of personality. That's not us. That is essentially the way of us coping with the world. So we need to conform. So we reform ourselves in order to conform. And therefore, we form these layers that just keep on padding as we grow older. Sadly, sometimes it takes the whole process to go up to where we are, in our 60s or 70s, and we start reversing it. And that's called second childhood.
Yes.
Where, like the case of my mom, for instance, and where it is so nice to see the child in them come alive. But the reality is, we should bring the child out now. You see, the greatest networkers are the simplest. They're not complicated people, they are driven people. And they don't set limits, they don't understand the concept. It is us who are fearful of this, fearful of that, confined by this, confined by that, looking here, looking there, listening. If we start listening to what people want, we will never be able to reach our potential.
True.
And that is how limits are set, by other people, not yourself. Now, if you set a limit for yourself, whatever it may be, then you can change that limit. You have limits in life wherever we go. We have speed limits. When we drive, we have time limits. When we are working and, we have conformed certain things, we have to rush to a plane or a schedule to be kept. So we have limits in everything that we do, speaking limits, watching limits, viewing limits. Everything is limited by a certain period of time. We put a coin into a machine, it only runs for a certain time. The one thing that has no limit is imagination. There is nothing that limits your imagination except yourself. What you can imagine, you can become. And the beauty of that process is recognizing that everything around us was somebody's imagination at one point.
True.
We are sitting in buildings that were somebody imagined somewhere. This particular chair was designed by somebody with a pencil somewhere. Everything that we look at, everything that's man-made, everything that we utilize was imagination. So imagination can become real. What limits you? 100 years ago, they said it's impossible, for us to do half the things we're doing right now. Just 100 years. 100 years means your grandfather was born. Your grandfather was alive. Anyone's grandfather. We are now in our middle age and our grandfather was alive. In his time, for instance, to imagine if you went up to him and told him, because at that time, 100 years ago, we were looking at 1910.
Yes.
Okay, the Wright brothers are just beginning to fly. Planes were just, so you could actually tell him that you can fly from, Sydney to London in so many hours. He's not going to buy that. Your grandfather probably, came here by ship.
Yes, true.
And so did many of us. At that time, in 1910, it was the Titanic, it was ships, it wasn't planes that took us across. So that's one thing. Then look at everything that's going to the moon. If you told your grandfather when he was a little child, we are going to walk on the moon, again he would say, oh, you're crazy. And like that, there's a whole series of things where limits have been broken over and over again, just between 3 generations. Your grandfather, which in most of our cases we have seen, or at least we know about, or if somebody has talked to you about him, either your mom or dad, and said, this is your grandfather. So that's a conscious recognition of an individual. That person lived, and between his life and yours is only 2 generations. And between that, the entire universe has changed.
Changed completely.
The world of the internet. How would you explain the world of the internet to your grandfather? How would you explain you can buy things online, to your grandfather and have it delivered to your door? Everything is magical today. If he actually lived today, he would find the whole world magical. So what would the grandchildren going forward from now, where would they be? What would be their world? So if we sit down here limiting ourselves, they are not going to be limiting themselves. The only way for you to catch up, understand, and eventually be able to converse with them, the millennials, so to speak, are already a whole new generation. We have to wake up and smell the coffee. Being limitless is just being normal. The problem is, we are not being normal. We have regressed. We allowed these limits to pull us down. We have chained ourselves with our thought processes, with the fears that society has built into us, and everything is a limit. So being limitless is going back to your normal self. Being limitless is being who you are. Being limitless ultimately is the real purpose of why you took birth. You took birth not to be limited. You took birth to fly.
Completely agree, Datusri. Datusri, you have always told me, which I've always disagreed with you. Right? I remember when you told me that, Padman, there's no difference between you and me. And I straightway told you, Datusri, there's a lot of difference between you and me. And you clearly said it, that the only difference between you and me is you are still holding yourself back. Right, Datusri? And I asked you this question many years ago because I didn't understand that I'm holding myself back. That doesn't relate, people don't relate to this statement, right? Because they believe the world is their greatest enemy. And you made a statement to me, Datusri, I'll never forget this. I was on your sofa, in your house, in your penthouse, all right? And you made this statement that, Padman, your greatest enemy is Padman Senatiraja.
Yes.
Right, Datusri? And today I realized that. I completely understand that whole the lesson you taught me back then. Is it fair to say, Dato Sri, that our greatest limitation factor or limiting factor is ourselves?
Absolutely.
And how would you change that, Dato Sri?
Ultimately, you are in a unique position. In fact, I just sent out this message about a day ago, which says that you are the sculptor and you are the marble. So that is the most difficult thing to recognize. You are the sculptor working on yourself. So what needs to come out of this sculpture, this blank granite stone, the beauty of what is hidden inside can only be unveiled by you. So if you make a mess going into it, that's you. If you stick true to your ideals and keep improving what you do, then it will also come out. The thing to recognize is, it's not so much that you are your own worst enemy in the sense that there is a Hitler inside of you.
Yes.
You are your own worst enemy simply because you tend to give in or give up.
Yes.
These are the two fundamental issues. Because generally you know what is right, but there are two things that stop you. One is you give in to temptation. You give in to the fact that, okay, the ego always says to you,
Yes.
you got to do this, you got to do that, and it even keeps rationally advising you that you're doing the right thing.
True, Dato Sri.
But if you don't keep going back to find a neutral point of reference, a mentor, guide, anyone else out there, there are 100 points of reference. People are always willing to guide.
True.
So people are always willing to direct you. Even your worst enemy actually can be your best teacher. Are you
I
with me?
realize that, Dato Sri.
What your worst enemy will tell you is exactly what you need to do, what he is confident you will not do. So a lot of times, just listening is a great guide. But just listening means you have to overcome your ego.
Yes.
So that means you have to humble yourself and say, okay, the universe is talking to me, God is talking to me, someone is talking to me, because this world that we live in is structured in a fashion for us to be able to do our very best. Beautifully put in another way is simply this: we live inside this body.
Yes.
It is this body that tells us everything. We experience everything through this body.
True.
You hear through your ears. It is through my eyes that I can define you are sitting there right now.
Yes.
So this body is the only source, the only bridge between you and the world. If your senses were cut off, you can't see a thing. Helen Keller, for instance,
True, Dato Sri.
brilliant in the fashion that the only thing she had was a sense of touch.
Yes.
And it's primarily through the sense of touch she was able to communicate with the world. But because she could not see, she was deaf and dumb, her essential senses were cut off, which meant that beautifully she was in a constant state of mauna, a constant state of meditation and silence, which allowed her mind to converse with the world, and she was able to see a lot more clearly than us, able to see a lot more clearly than you and me, because simply of the fact she didn't have all the interruptions, she didn't have all the layers, she was a lot more sincere.
True, Dato Sri.
She was limitless. Helen Keller is a classic example of someone who was limitless. Are you with me?
Yes.
So she went against the grain. She became the person, the inspiration she was, because she was limitless. So again, what is the worst enemy we have? All of these programming that's in our head. We give up because of the programming, we give in because of the ego. So these two issues, have to be removed.
Understood.
Because what you were told yesterday is yesterday's news. And the fact that you learned it yesterday means it needs to be relearned today. You need to find a new mentor, guide, source of learning today. So whatever is there cannot be taken as a guide for today. First rule, that's humility. Second, what you're going to apply tomorrow is also not relevant. The only thing relevant, because tomorrow is a dream, yesterday is a memory, today, right now, this moment, living in now, Living in now is the only way to live. Helen Keller had no choice. She had totally cut off. She lived in the now. Mother Teresa beautifully lived in the now. You know, when a reporter asked her, you know, as she bent up to pick up a dirty child from the muddy pool that was there on the ground, she just picked up this child and her robes got all dirty. While cleaning the child, while carrying the child and caressing the child with her love, the reporter says, what difference does it make to pick up this one child? And she said, it makes a difference to him. The reporter was comparing it with the million other children out there. She lived in the now. And living in the now meant this child, at this moment, there was a difference. And that's exactly how you have to overcome, by living in the now.
Dato Sri, thank you so much, Dato Sri. This is bringing back memories of me sitting with you over the past 18 years. Thank you so much, Dato Sri, for the first episode. And guys, many more episodes to come with our one and only upline and mentor, the one and only Dato Sri Vijay Ishwan. And this is your opportunity to be in his zone.